Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our first event in the virtual Los Alamos ScienceFest Discovery Day. We'll wait a few minutes here as people join, and then we'll get started. Thank you to those who are joining. Good morning and welcome to our first event of the virtual Los Alamos Science Fest. We'll wait a few more minutes here as people join, and then we'll get started. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our first event of the virtual Los Alamos Science Fest Discovery Day. We're joined today by Miss America 2020, Miss Camille Schrier, who will conduct a blood bubbles demo for us and answer a Q&A afterwards. This session will be recorded and found on our event app and website later today, losalamosciencefest.com. If you have questions for Camille, please go ahead and put them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Now, I'd like to introduce Miss America 2020, Camille Schrier. In December 2019, Camille Schrier earned the job of Miss America 2020 after competing live on NBC from Mohegan Sun Arena in Connecticut. A certified naloxone trainer in the city of Richmond, Schrier uses the Miss America national recognition to promote her own social impact initiative, Mind Your Meds, drug safety and abuse prevention from pediatrics to geriatrics. Most recently, Camille was awarded the Engineering Champion Award by the Phi Sigma Rho National Sorority for her work in promoting women in engineering and technical fields. Camille's job this year is to share her message and advocate for change by speaking to audiences and demonstrating her Miss America talent. In addition to her passion for science and drug safety, Camille has battled body image issues. As a young woman who previously battled an eating disorder, Camille chose to compete in Miss America 2020 because of the redirection from physical appearance to social impact. Camille has appeared in numerous national and international TV news programs to discuss drug safety, STEM, and her time as Miss America. Now, at this time, I'd like to welcome Camille to Los Alamos Science Fest Discovery Day.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. It is my pleasure to be here with you all this morning. I hope that you are ready to have a super fun day full of science. So I am Camille Schrier. I am Miss America 2020, but what you just got to learn a little bit about me is that I am also a woman who loves science. I have loved science quite literally for as long as I can remember. So I want to just tell you a little bit about why I got interested in science before we do some fun science of our own. How does that sound? So I am 25 now, but when I was as young as I can remember, I think probably 4 or 5, I started really loving science because I love being outside. And so maybe you've gone outside with your parents. I used to go fishing, I used to garden, and I loved animals. I loved picking up bugs, I loved growing things, and it was my favorite thing to do. And my parents really started to tell me that what I loved was nature. I'm like, gosh, nature's the coolest. I think I want to be a naturologist when I grow up. Well, spoiler alert, there's no such thing as a naturologist. I think what I was trying to say was that I loved biology. And that honestly remains true to this day. But I continued to do more science around me, basically. I continued to learn about the science around me. I loved cooking and baking. I don't know if you've ever cooked or baked with your parents. If you bake, oh, I hit my glasses here. If you bake a batch of cookies with your mom or dad, you are doing a science demonstration. Everything that you do in the kitchen is so based upon biology and chemistry. And so then I did those things and I wanted to be a chef. And I will say, I think that if if you look at a chef, they are equal parts scientist and artist. They really are able to meld both of those things together. So I wanted to be a scientist, or wanted to be a chef, but I think that those are also scientists. Then I thought maybe I would be a food scientist because I loved food and I loved science. But as the older that I got, the more that I started to understand that I loved biology and chemistry. Those were the two things that I loved the most. Got to go to a lot of different science camps, and doing things like the events today are so important to starting to explore what part of, the STEM field that you really enjoy and like. And so you've heard about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. The thing is if you say you want to have a STEM career, well, there's a lot of options, and it's important that you start to figure out what pieces of STEM and what pieces of science, technology, engineering, and math that work for you. So through things like being outside and cooking and baking, I learned that I really loved biology and chemistry, maybe through different camps and exploration things that you get to do as you get older and as you go through school. You will learn that you like different topics. Maybe you like computer science, maybe you like building computers, maybe you like engineering, maybe you like solving things with math, and those are all great things to learn. So now I graduated college about 2 years ago, and I have a degree in biochemistry. Spoiler alert, told you that I loved biology and chemistry. And then I have another degree in systems biology, which is basically a fancy way that I can say that I solved biological problems with computer science. So I got to do all that, and now I am in pharmacy school. So maybe you have gone to a pharmacy and gotten a medication, and there's that person behind the counter who gives you your medication. And so I'm learning how to do that. But that person also has lots and lots of education. Those people are usually doctors. And I'm learning how to do that so then I can help design new medicines to help people. So I'm learning about all of those things. But what I didn't mention to you is why in the heck I'm wearing this sparkly hat on my head. But you already know. So I am Miss America. And the really, really cool part about being Miss America, especially this year, is that I got to use science to help me win Miss America. And what I want you to think about is what you think of when you think of Miss America or a lady with a crown on her head. A lot of times I hear, oh, are you a princess? Are you a queen? And people think that if you wear a crown, that maybe you like to wear pretty gowns and you get to do all these fun things, which is sometimes true. But I got to wear this sparkly hat, as I like to call it, because I love science. And that's probably not what you had thought of originally if you thought of Miss America. And that's why I'm so excited to be able to do this year. So I want to tell you a little bit about how in the heck I became Miss America, and then we'll move on to our science. So I never thought I could be Miss America. There is a talent competition at Miss America, and that's been part of our program for probably 60 years. And here's the thing. If you've ever watched like America's Got Talent, it is not like that. Usually there are only about 5 different talents that you see on stage at Miss America. So women who sing, women who dance, girls that can play instruments, maybe twirl batons or do puppet displays called ventriloquism. And those are amazing, and I think that they're so fun, but I literally can't do any of those things. And I remember looking at my parents and saying, wow, like I wish I could compete for Miss America. I could earn money to go to graduate school, and I would get so much experience. And I said, I don't have a talent. I don't have any talents, so I can't compete. And I remember saying that, and this is really important, no matter if you are a girl, a boy, old, young. When you think of like the idea that you don't have any talents, that shouldn't be true for you, because every person has their own unique talents. We all have special gifts. We all have things that we are good at, but they might not be things that everybody else is good at or that everybody else loves or likes. And the thing is, that's totally okay. So I thought that I could never compete at Miss America because I didn't do those 5 different talents that everyone else does. And the thing was, I was a little afraid to do something different. And maybe, and this again, this has no matter who you are, maybe you've been in a situation where you feel like you are the only one of your friends, of your colleagues that is doing something differently. And it can be kind of scary to be that person that does something differently. But based upon the sparkly hat I have on my head, I can tell you that it worked out. And it's really important to stay true to who you are, because I told you how literally my entire life I loved science. It was my favorite thing to do. And so maybe like the girl next to me who danced on stage at Miss America, who had danced since she was 5, I loved science since I was 5. So it's important that if you get into those situations in your life, which you will, or maybe you're pursuing a career that, you know, you don't think you're cut out for, but you love it, it's important to stay grounded in the fact that you can achieve whatever you want if you set your mind to it. And going off of the beaten path and kind of taking the road less traveled is sometimes the best way to go. So that's my little spiel. Now I'm Miss America, and normally I get to travel around the country, usually 20,000 miles a month, usually about 300 days a year, but I have been in my house for 4 months, probably like all of you. So now I'm continuing to do my job virtually. One of my favorite things to do throughout this process is to do science demonstrations. I love science demonstrations. It was like my favorite thing when I walked into science class when I was younger, to be able to see like the demo table out. I was like, this is going to be a good day. So I was able to kind of bring that on stage and celebrate science through the Miss America competition, but now I also get to do it across the country. So we are going to do one of my favorite demonstrations here today, and it is called blood bubbles. And you will understand why by the end. Ooh, I'm gonna knock my beakers over. But before I start, of course, we have to make sure that we're protected. One of the really funny things about the pandemic that's happening is I have heard the word personal protective equipment so many more times this year than I probably have in my whole life. And that's really important because as scientists, one of the things that we are responsible for is protecting ourselves and protecting other people. So I always make sure that I have the proper personal protective equipment on before I start doing my science demonstrations. So I want you to guess what I might have to put on. You can say it out loud. Think about what I'm not wearing, and I'm going to show you. So I have my lab coat on. I'm going to button it up to make sure I am all protected. I have long hair, so my hair is back in a ponytail. So I've already got that covered. I don't have any crazy dangly jewelry on. I'm going to put some gloves on. Make sure that my hands are protected. And then there's one more really, really important thing that I have to put on. And that is safety glasses. I like to wear my pink safety glasses because, you know, just because you're being safe doesn't mean that your safety glasses cannot be pink. Mine also have rhinestones on them. There's no safety rule against having rhinestones on your safety glasses. So I am going to take my 3 beakers out here, and we are going to pour, you know what, I'm going to put my computer down just a little bit. So we are going to pour, oops, too far down. Sorry, guys. This is what happens when you do Zoom science. So I'm going to pour some distilled water, which basically means that it doesn't have any minerals or ions. It's just super, super plain water into my 3 beakers. Go like that. A little bit more in that one. So part of the reason that this demonstration, I like to call it blood bubbles, is because it's going to teach us something really cool about why we breathe. I want you to think about that. Why do you think that we breathe? We know that we breathe because we need oxygen, but I want you to even think a little bit deeper than that. Why do we actually go and we don't really think about it? Like I thought about it because I just did that intentionally, but throughout the day, you don't normally think about like, okay, took 2 steps, got to take a breath. You don't think about that. You have this really, really cool thing called your brain. And it's like the smartest computer that you could ever think of. And your brain is kind of like, it senses chemicals, it can sense signals, and it is kind of like a computer at the same time. But what I want to talk to you about is something called pH. And it's part of the reason why our brain knows that we have to take a breath. And we're going to demonstrate that today using these beakers. So I want you to think about it this way. When you are maybe in gym class, maybe you're working out, maybe you're going for a run, you are working really, really hard. You need oxygen to breathe in, to make your blood, your blood is going to bring all of that oxygen around to your muscles, to your organs, to all of your cells in your body. And when your muscles and all of those things are using it, it's going to release something called carbon dioxide. And that is what we breathe out. So when I breathe in, I'm breathing in oxygen. And when I breathe out, I'm breathing out carbon dioxide. And you're probably wondering, how does this have to do with pH? And what pH is basically when we talk about acidity and basicity, is something an acid or a base. We think of like something like a lemon being sour, being an acid. And we think of maybe something like baking soda being a base. And if you've ever done like a baking soda and vinegar volcano and you see those things bubble all up, that is an acid-base reaction. Those things are basically opposites. And the interesting thing is when we breathe and we start to use the oxygen in our body, that carbon dioxide that is produced actually changes the pH of our blood. When carbon dioxide is dissolved in a liquid like water, it actually drops the pH. It makes it more acidic. It turns into something called carbonic acid, which is really cool because our brain then can sense the pH of what's happening to our blood, and it can say, you know what? The pH is dropping. It's getting more acidic. We're going to have to breathe faster to make sure that that carbon dioxide is being released. And so we are actually going to make fake blood, and we are going to show you exactly what that's going to look like. So what I'm going to use is something called a pH indicator. All this is going to do is change colors when the pH changes. And this is going to be really not exciting when I put this in for the first time because it's clear. But I'm going to make it change color. Don't you worry. So what I basically have to do is water is a neutral pH. Technically it has a pH of 7, which means it is completely neutral, not acidic or basic. What I need to do to make it change color is make it a little bit basic. So I am going to raise the pH up by putting a couple drops of a base in, and it's going to turn pink. And this is going to be our fake blood. And I am going to use a very, very high-tech stirring rod here, which is a straw. So I have my super, super pink solution. And we're going to pretend like this is my blood. And I'm going to show you what happens when I put carbon dioxide rich air through my blood. So I want you to think about, again, you're outside, you're either running around, you're playing really hard, your body is creating so much carbon dioxide because you're breathing in a lot of oxygen, and that is going to change the pH of your blood. So this is my blood, and here's the thing I'm going to tell you. When the blood gets more acidic, so the pH will go down. When that happens, this little pH indicator that I put in my water is going to go from pink to clear. And when you see that color change, that is what's going to tell you that the pH has changed. And instead of this pH indicator, we have our brain that tells our body that, but we can't do that here. So I am going to use that pH indicator, and then you'll be able to also see that the pH has changed. So what I get to do now is I am going to blow bubbles into my blood, which is why I call this the blood bubbles demonstration. And what I want you to watch for is how the color changes. And remember, that it's the carbon dioxide from my breath that is going to change the color. So you ready to watch? Let's do it. Okay, we got one. Got two. Oh, okay. Look how cool that is. So now they are all clear. And what we literally just showed is exactly what happens when you go for a run, when you work out, your blood starts to change pH. And this change is exactly what tells your brain that you have to take more breaths. It will increase the rate that you actually breathe at. And this is the coolest demonstration of what's actually happening in your body. And part of the reason I love this so much, I told you guys that I am a doctor of pharmacy student. And so I'm really interested to know the science of how the body works. And this is a perfect example of that. And here's the other really cool thing. So I changed the pH, right? So I went from, I made it basic in the beginning, and I turned it pink by putting that little drop of base in there. My breath took the pH from being basic to being more on the acidic side. But my pH indicator is still in there. So just like my brain has the sensor, this also still has the sensor in it. So what I can do is with a couple drops, I can turn everything back to pink, which is pretty awesome. And so when you think about your brain and how your brain works, I want you to think about these 3 beakers full of solution and how I can blow bubbles in them and change pH with just using my breath, which is super, super fun. So I'm going to put these to the side, and I hope that you enjoyed that. That is one of my favorite demonstrations to be able to do. And I get to bring that into schools basically across the country. But I'm always fascinated by how the brain works and why we are able to, we have this incredible machine that controls our body. And I'm just completely fascinated by that. So I hope that you enjoyed that. That was pretty cool. And I also sent I think I sent it to Lauren. She'll send it to you all of you. There is a way that you can do this at home. So the chemicals that I used here are not something that I would suggest that you use in your home unless you have experience. But you can do this with red cabbage. So you can use red cabbage juice as a pH indicator that will be able to do this as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Camille. That was a great demo. And as she said, I have a link to the article that she recommended, and I will be posting that out through our event app and our Facebook page and website. So Camille, we are starting to have some questions come in for you.
Awesome.
Can you just clarify what base did you use in the experiment?
I used 0.1 molar sodium hydroxide. Good question.
Great. Okay. And for those joining today that don't know what a pH indicator is, can you explain that a little bit more too?
Yes. So basically, this is a pH indicator. It's called phenolphthalein is the actual chemical that I use. The best way to talk about what a pH indicator is it just is a visual way to see a change in pH. So when the color changes, it's showing you that the acidity and basicity of that solution has actually changed. Instead of needing like a meter or needing a sensor to be able to show you that, just the color change is going to show that the solution has changed from an acid to a base or in whatever pH you're looking at.
Okay, great. I have another question related, a very specific question related
Okay.
to pH for you,
Yes.
if you want to try to address it.
Sure.
How do people with sickle cell anemia regulate their blood pH?
How do people with sickle cell anemia regulate their blood pH? I do not know the answer to that question myself, but I would assume, because what sickle cell anemia is just that the actual cells, the red blood cells, are shaped differently. They don't carry hemoglobin the same way and oxygen. I would think that they regulate the pH the same way, but maybe the actual regulation is less effective. I'm going to look into that. That's a really, really good question. I'm going to have to look that one up.
It's very specific, I know.
Very specific. Good question, whoever asked that.
Okay, so you talked about your journey to becoming Miss America and your interest in science from a young age.
Yeah.
How did the Miss America committee react when you gave your talent as performing a science experiment?
So I have done the demonstration, at my local competition. So before I even got to go to Miss Virginia, which is my state competition, and then I did it at Miss America. So from the moment that I began competing with a science demonstration, I think everyone was very confused, number one. And people were mostly concerned because I was doing elephant's toothpaste that I would either hit the ceiling of the room we were in or stain the floors with the coloring that I used. And so I had to do a lot of convincing, but it was kind of met with a lot of confusion in general at first. But I think that when people are able to see it, the way that I actually do the demonstration is pretty much like a performance that involves a science, like a reaction. And once I was able to kind of show that it was science entertainment, I think that those who were more performance-based kind of understood what I was doing. But the biggest thing I will tell you is that I had to be really careful to protect whatever facility I was doing it in, because I didn't want to damage places. And when I do elephant's toothpaste, I use a ton of food coloring. Even the catalyst that I use, which has iodine in it, it can stain really, really badly. So lots of logistics, but we made it work. And I think it's been a really cool experience.
Great. Elizabeth is asking if compressed air would do the same thing.
For this particular, it would not, unless it was compressed CO2. Because if you just had regular compressed outdoor air, it would not do the same thing. It's the fact that I am metabolizing and, using oxygen in my body. So I have a high concentration of carbon dioxide in my exhaled air.
Okay, great.
I will say, I'm going to do one side note. Dry ice will do the same thing, because dry ice is solid carbon dioxide. So if I put actually dry ice into this beaker right now, it would turn clear.
Wow, okay. And dry ice is something that you really need to make sure you handle carefully, and that's not for home use as well, right?
Absolutely. Should preface that. You have to make sure you actually can burn yourself with dry ice, almost like if you were to handle like really, really hot fire or something that was heated. Dry ice can burn your skin with cold.
So one of our attendees watched some of your YouTube channel videos, your science videos, and he was wondering, how do you get the ideas for your videos?
That's a really good question. A lot of the demonstrations that I do, I have either seen, experienced as a student, or have just been things that I think are really good representations of basic scientific concepts. I'm always looking for things that are really visual. The visual aspect, I think, is what can really engage the audience, especially a younger audience. But this one, I think I got off of, I was watching some YouTube demonstrations. I have some favorite science entertainers, I also have to admit, who I look up to and I watch what they do in their demonstrations, and I learn a lot from them. And then I'm able to take that type of a demonstration and adapt it to what my strengths are and what my knowledge is. And so I've learned a lot from them. But this one is from, I think I learned this from Steve Spangler, who is one of my favorite science entertainers. You should look him up. And like I did one on DNA candy. So there's actually a video where I make like DNA out of Twizzlers and little tiny marshmallows. I learned that at a science festival in Virginia. that I really just was like, this is the coolest thing. Can I please have the directions to this? So I acquire them, and then I hope to share them with people that will enjoy them too.
Great. So you mentioned some science entertainers that you are inspired by. Are there any other resources that you're aware of that kids can check out online during this quarantine period, either articles or videos or channels that you might recommend?
Yeah, so I got to work with 3M, so the company that actually has made a lot of the masks that we're wearing right now, and like tape products. They make almost everything. I did a series called Science at Home with 3M, and it was not just me, it was all of the different scientists from 3M made videos at home for different science concepts. Those are really wonderful. I mentioned Steve Spangler, and he has a YouTube channel and a Facebook page. He has been one of my mentors, and he does amazing, fun science demos in his house all the time. And YouTube is a wonderful resource if you look up science demonstrations for kids. And then, of course, my channel, which some of you have already seen, but is still growing as I am filming here during quarantine. So the internet has so many wonderful resources to do all of that.
Great. What's your YouTube channel is called again? The Science of, right? Or can you clarify that?
Yeah, so my YouTube channel is just youtube.com/Camille Schrier. You should be able to find my channel that way. I do actually, so I just started a PBS series in Virginia that actually can be accessed online, and that's another good one. I'll link to that. If you do, I think it's called PBS VPM, letters VPM together, virtual classroom, and I have a new show with them called Cooking Up Science with Miss America. Only one episode is out. They come out every week. That's another good resource too.
Great. And maybe we can post some of these to our website and social
Absolutely.
media channels too on your
For sure.
behalf. Great. What was your favorite science class when you were in school?
Ooh, okay. This is a very different kind of science class, but I got to take a marine biology class in high school. And that was really different most high schools don't offer that kind of a science class, but I told you guys I love animals. I really, really love all animals, creatures, do not discriminate, not just cats and dogs. Really enjoyed learning about because you think about chemistry of water is so based, in the way that marine life is able to exist and be healthy. Learning about the environmental impacts that happened to, our environment that allows animals to either flourish or not. That was really, really cool. So I enjoyed that. And then I would say in college, I was a biochemistry major. I took this really, really intensive biochemistry lab that we were using all these different, it would be very complex to explain, but basically learning the laboratory techniques that are really key to understanding biochemistry. Hardest class I've ever taken, but really, really enjoyed it. I started to really understand how proteins work, how enzymes work, what catalysts are and how they really work. And that, I think, was probably the biggest thing I learned in college.
Okay, that's great. You mentioned that you had body image issues when you were younger. This is a question from Gloria. How did you decide to participate in a beauty contest as a result?
Good question. So I had competed in what you think of as pageants when I was a teenager. And when I say pageants, I use that word very carefully because we think of toddlers and tiaras, which is not accurate at all. You weren't even allowed to wear makeup until you were 16. And I learned so much from that. I learned how to speak in front of a group. I gained confidence. I learned how to interview with people I had never spoken to before when I was a teenager. And I got those skills from it. And I was like, okay, I'm done. I don't need to ever do this again. And Miss America especially had always really been based in beauty and appearance. And literally even historically, they used to measure the women to see what their measurements were and your proportions. But that was in the old days. And so in 2018, they got rid of the swimsuit competition, and they also eliminated all physical judging criteria from the judges' kind of instructions. And all of the criteria was changed to be more intellectual, the way that you communicated, what you had done, kind of based upon your resume and your experiences. And that made me want to come in and try this opportunity because it also affords me experience and scholarship money. So I felt like that was much more aligned and wouldn't compromise any progress that I had made battling my body image issues as a young person. And I'm glad that I did that. And so now I got to win Miss America, and it didn't have to be in a swimsuit on stage. And more power to anyone that wants to do that. It just wasn't something that was healthy for me.
What's the biggest challenge, would you say, that you faced on your way to becoming Miss America?
Definitely the science piece, funny enough, which has been, sometimes our biggest challenges come out as our biggest strengths because there's something that we're learning and growing from that. So people are really, really skeptical of me doing science because our program has so been traditionally based in the performing arts and these particular boxed in pieces of talent that we see as talent. And there are a lot of critics. I've faced a lot of criticism doing something differently. And I think that that's really true in all aspects of life. If you're the one person doing something differently, the majority sometimes look at you and be like, what are you doing? And that's 100% okay. And I think that that's made me grow as a human being. But one of the biggest challenges has just been being different in so many ways, not wanting to wear a swimsuit, not wanting to be judged on my appearance, and doing science. It was a lot of new things coming all at once, but wouldn't have done it any other way.
So we have a question about your crown.
Yes.
They're wondering how much it weighs. Is it heavy?
Okay, so because especially this is a science fest, I'm going to go into the science of my crown too, because I just really enjoy it. It is not that heavy. I don't know exactly how much it weighs, but it is metal. It's not like plastic. It has 792 Swarovski crystals in it.
Wow.
It is a bronze base soldered together with a tin alloy metal and then silver plated. So that's actually like the construction of what the metal is. So it's not like a very heavy metal, but it has some weight to it. I honestly don't even feel it on my head anymore. And people ask me how I keep it on, and I'm going to show you. So you'll see these little bands. They're actually pantyhose. So like ladies' tights that they wear are strung in my crown, and then I bobby pin it on. And I literally don't even feel it on my head. So not too heavy, but it's pretty cool. And I get to keep it. Everyone wants to know if I can keep it. I do keep it. So it's pretty fun.
That's a nice perk.
It's a good thing to keep on my shelf for the rest of my life after my job is done.
So as you know, our theme this year for ScienceFest 2020 is Eyes on the Future. Mm-hmm. So can you talk a little bit about what you believe are the major STEM related challenges today? What will we see happen in the future? What are your hopes for the future of science? Can you talk a little bit along those lines?
I mean, more than anything, STEM jobs are exploding. And I think that's why events like these are so important, because we need the younger generation to find their place in a STEM career. And, I'm a big advocate for following what your passions are, but if you have a passion, I am sure that you can find some job that relates to it in a STEM field. I mean, even if you're a painter, if you love painting, think of the chemistry of the paint that you're working on. There's so many little connections. I'd always joke about like how I spray hairspray in my hair in the morning. And some chemist actually created the formulation and the packaging of the hairspray that I use. So if you're looking to find a rewarding career that can support you financially, STEM is the way to go, and it's only going to keep growing. One of the things that, particularly from a pharmacy perspective, I think about is automation. And a lot of the jobs that maybe were traditionally done by humans, like if I'm counting out pills in a pharmacy, which is honestly not the reality of what a pharmacist does most of the time, jobs like that will probably become automated as STEM is starting to grow. But trying to stay innovative, finding your place in a STEM field, in a company that will be able to support you, and finding what your passions are, those are things that are going to drive you into a wonderful, wonderful STEM job in the future. And you're not going to struggle to find employment. I can really stress that. And I'm already getting job offers, and I'm not even done school yet. So that's one of the blessings of this. And I don't think you can go wrong with a STEM career. But I will also say it's very, very important to find a STEM career that works with your talents and passions and skills that you have as a human being. Because I started out actually wanting to be an engineer when I started college. And I didn't like it, and it didn't work for me. And it took me a long time to realize that it was okay that that wasn't the right path for me. I'm not embarrassed that I'm a biochemistry major. Like it was so hard. It was challenging. I enjoyed it. But the thing was that it fit my skills and my passions better than that engineering degree that I had done. So don't just pick something because you think it's a good idea. You should pick it because you like it and you think it's a good idea.
That's great advice. So we have a question from Donovan.
Yes.
Those who work in the sciences, so how can adults better communicate with the general public and kids who are interested in a future STEM career on technical issues? What are your tips on that front?
I am a big advocate for, especially for the younger population, giving them more information than maybe you think that they can understand. And I am a big advocate. I was always spoken to as a young person, assuming that I would understand, not assuming that I wouldn't. And I think that that gave me a greater outlook into higher level problems that maybe people assumed I wouldn't understand because I was a young person. And I'm glad that that was how I was taught, because it always taught me to strive a little farther, to stretch what I understood a little bit farther to understand what that person was communicating with me. But I think the biggest thing that adults and professionals can do right now is invite young ones to see what they do. Because one of the things that I really learned from as a younger person was those hands-on experiences. So I used to shadow my parents' friends some of them worked in manufacturing, some of them were engineers, some of them were chemists, and I went to work with them a day. I would go in, follow them to what they did, walk around their office and talk to them and ask questions about what they did for their jobs and understand what did you major in college? Do you think that you should have done that? Do you regret it? What are your perks of your job? What don't you like? What do you like? And those experiences as a younger person gave me a lot more, outlook in what I wanted to do. So invite a young science lover into your life and be a mentor for them, because I think that that's one of the most important things we can do right now.
Great advice. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Sabrina is asking, how did you handle kids picking on you because you liked science in school?
So I'm really lucky. I didn't have a lot of other students pick on me. And I'm going to be really honest here. I never really had people pick on me that much in school. I've been picked on more now being Miss America than I've probably ever been picked on in my whole life. That's also part of being a public figure. So now I have more people that watch what I do every day. So there's more people to pick on me. But I was really lucky because the schools that I went to really supported me as a young woman wanting to pursue science. And my friends didn't really care that I loved science and they liked other things. And I had a few other friends that were science lovers too. And in college, I was literally immersed in other people that were loving science too. So I'm grateful for that. But the funny thing is, now I'm kind of an adult, and now other adults kind of pick on me more than I did when I was younger. And I think it's important, especially for any adults watching, that we set that example for our young ones to be respectful and be loving of other people that are different than us, because there's still that lacks in our society somewhere too. But the biggest thing that I will say to everyone is just do you and don't worry about what other people say, because it never helps you to wallow in what other people's opinions are of you, or if they're picking on you. Just prove them all wrong and do what you want to do.
Great. So if you talked a little bit about your advice for those who are interested in the STEM field,
Yeah.
What advice would you give to a middle schooler who wants to be Miss America one day?
Oh my gosh. I think that the biggest piece of advice I would say is kind of goes off of what I was talking about just before. Be 100% true to yourself in every single aspect of your life. Because if you are going to be Miss America, if you are going to compete for Miss America, you have to be sure of who you are, number one. And you have to be confident in everything that you do, because you're gonna face challenges, you're gonna face adversity, and you're going to be in all of these different situations. it's a wonderful learning opportunity. But if you aren't strong in who you are as a person, you're not going to be there yet. And that's one of the biggest things that, I mean, if I were in middle school, I would have never been ready to do this job. But all of the things that I got to do from middle school beyond put me in the places where I learned who I was. And I got experiences that would give me the opportunity to do this job. And the best way to win the job of Miss America is literally to act like you are Miss America and do the job of Miss America before you get there. Because if you can prove that, hey, I'm already traveling around the country doing science demonstrations and advocating for women in science and all the things that I said I wanted to do as Miss America, I was already doing those things before I went to the competition. And so start thinking about what you might want to advocate for socially. That's something that we do. I talk about drug safety and abuse prevention and science, and start building those things early, learning communication skills, learning interview skills, which quite honestly, whether or not you are a young boy or girl, honestly, those skills are so important to getting a job and having a really successful career that those are things that you should learn anyway. So those are kind of like my pieces of advice.
Okay, great. So earlier you said you're in pharmacy school.
Yes.
We have a question from the audience. They want to know where you're going to school.
Yes.
And what's next for you in the future?
So I am in pharmacy school at Virginia Commonwealth University, called VCU, in Richmond, Virginia. I'm not there right now. I took 2 total years off to be Miss Virginia and then Miss America because they are both full-time positions. So I had to take some time off. My school has been so amazing to let me take time off and have been like my biggest cheerleaders during this time. And what's next for me directly after being Miss America is I will go back to pharmacy school. It is a 4-year doctoral program, and I have done 1 of those 4 years. So I have 3 more years remaining. And then after I'm done, I really am looking to get a career in the pharmaceutical industry or some kind of biotech company. I would love to be able to combine science with business and understand, how companies can start to develop other treatments or maybe other medicines or things that will help change people's lives. So I'm really excited to be able to do that once I finally graduate. But that also could change because one of the cool things about being Miss America is I get to meet so many people who have, especially scientists right now, as I'm doing so many science events, that maybe I'll have an opportunity to get employment somewhere else that I don't even know exists yet, so I keep an open mind for that.
So who's your favorite person that you've met so far in your role as Miss America? You mentioned that you've met some scientists. Is there anyone that stood out, and why did they stand out?
Oh, okay, so particularly scientists, it's hard because I met them on Zoom, but I haven't met them in person. I was supposed to go and meet Steve Spangler. I talk about Steve Spangler all the time. Sorry, guys. He is the resident scientist for the Ellen Show. And so anytime you see a science demonstration on Ellen, it's him that does it. And he is the coolest. So I watched all his videos before I went to Miss America, and now we get to do events together virtually. We were supposed to do them together in person. So he's been really cool. I've gotten to meet the resident scientist for Jimmy Kimmel as well. I actually was on the Kelly Clarkson show when I was Miss Virginia, and I did a demonstration there. So that was really cool. So I got to meet Kelly Clarkson. Who are other people I got to meet? Okay, this is a really kind of nerdy one, but I got to meet the Surgeon General of the United States before coronavirus happened. And he was so excited because his daughter wants to be an engineer, and she's probably like 11 or 12. So I got to meet him and his daughter. That's probably like the list of the cool people I've gotten to meet science related. I'm trying to think of who else. That's probably my list for now. I don't really get to meet, I don't meet like a lot of like celebrities, which is like kind of like what a lot of people think that I get to do. But the scientists have been super, super cool. And then for those science nerds out there, I am literally going to meet the person that developed CRISPR, the gene editing technology. I'll be on like a science panel of scientists with her next week. So I don't know how I ended up qualified to be next to the woman that invented CRISPR, but we are going with it, and I am thrilled.
That's great. Can people here in Los Alamos tune in to that panel too?
Potentially. I will look into that and send you some information.
Okay, great. Well, so lastly, what are your key takeaways or words of encouragement to young people today, especially young girls when it comes to science? What are some final comments that you'd like to leave our audience with today?
Yeah, so the biggest thing, especially for the young girls who are watching, I would always say, don't assume that you are going to be treated any differently as a woman in science. Go into loving science with your full heart. Don't think that you're going to be, discriminated against or treated like you're not smart enough. The more that you're confident in your abilities, focus on learning the information, proving that you know how to do things, and showing people with your experience that you are just as qualified as anyone else in the room. I think having that attitude has been really positive for me in my career. But for anyone that is looking to do a career in science, I think, or STEM particularly more broadly, the exploration piece I cannot stress enough, because there are so many options, and it's important not to box yourself in. And to go on a more broader perspective, like me doing a science demonstration at Miss America rather than singing or dancing, I think that's a great example of not boxing myself into a place that is just assumed. Think of the really innovative and up and coming careers that you could have in STEM. Things are being developed every single day. New topics are being discovered, new places, new technologies. There are so many different things that you could do with STEM. So keep your mind open and keep learning and keep exploring, because you'll find the place eventually, and be patient, where you love and what you love to study and do. So that exploration piece I cannot stress enough. And to, of course, work really hard, because learning science, learning STEM is not easy. I'm not going to pretend like it's easy. It's not easy for everybody. It might be easier for one person more than another, but it takes a lot of hard work and dedication to get to the point where you're able to be a functioning, practicing scientist. But all of that work and effort that you put in will be 110% worth it. And I can tell you that too. It opens so many doors. And I remember being in college and having those days where I was just like, I am so tired. This is so hard. But I look back now and I'm so grateful that I went through that process and got through it, because you'll get through it. Even if it's middle school, elementary school, or high school, or college, you'll get through it and you'll be happy on the other side.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Camille, for joining us today. It was a pleasure to have you participate and help kick off our virtual Discovery Day. We know things shifted with the pandemic. You were supposed to be here in person in Los Alamos, but we'd love to invite you back. Maybe you can attend our event next summer.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you, guys. I really enjoyed being able to do this, and I hope you enjoyed our little blood bubbles and all of our discussions. So thank you guys so much for tuning in.
So for those of you who want to follow up with Camille, you can do so on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, either at Miss America or at Camille Schrier. So, and check out her YouTube channel as well.
Very cool. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of virtual Discovery Day. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Camille.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.